everybody who's joining us, and welcome. My name is Michelle. I'm part of the Tribal Hub team here with our friends at Arctic IT and some special guests that we'll get to in a second. We have a great presentation lined up today. It's lots of people who have registered, so we're going to give it a minute or so before we really get into it. So if you're just joining, if you wouldn't mind using the chat and letting us know where you're dialing in from. It's like my favorite thing to do on these webinars, see where everyone's calling in from. I am in our Tribal Hub Gaylord, Michigan office today, which is like upper northern Michigan. It's a very rainy day, but we had some super hot days, which I think everybody did over this past week. Tucson, Leech Lake, Sault Ste. Marie. It's where I grew up. Awesome. Green Bay. Oh, hi, Jason. Virginia. Oh, Dan. Grayton. Oh, Oneida is represented today. Oh, Grayton too. This is awesome. Bear River, no, Northern California. Yeah. Another Green Bay. I always love these because you literally have people from like across like the entire country, which I love. New Mexico.
Tucson.
Yep. Tucson, Arizona. Layton. Laytonville. Zuni Tribe, Oregon. Love it. Oh, Pasquayaki. Sweet. Still getting a few people coming in, so I'm gonna hold off for a little bit. Alaska.
Wow, Barrow. That's way up there. I was just up in Anchorage and Fairbanks visiting the Doyon offices last week. Barrow's a
Oh, God, Matt,
lot
you are
further.
all over.
That's right up on the northern coast. That's great.
Wow. This is amazing. I love it.
Good morning, Yolanda from the Tohono O'odham Nation. I see her in the chat.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yep.
All right, well, we are going to get started just so we can get this show on the road. So hello again, everybody. My name is Michelle, part of the Tribal Hub team, going to be your host today for this webinar that we are presenting in partnership with Arctic IT. We have presenters today representing Arctic IT, Tohono O'odham Nation, and the Mohegan Tribe. This session will be recorded, so if you have to leave early or you want someone else on your team to watch it, you will receive a link to the recording by tomorrow afternoon. You can also find it on tribalhub.com. A couple of learning objectives to think about while our speakers are presenting. And if you have any questions at any time, you can put them in the chat, or you can also use the Q&A function that's on the bottom of the screen as well. We will go over some of the questions during the presentations, but we also have time at the very end as well. And just a quick what's happening at Tribal Hub. We have our TribalNet conference happening in September in Reno. Still some early bird pricing available, and we are starting to put out some information about our new certified technology, tribal technology professional certification that's coming out in November. So you can always head over to our website to see any of that information. So with that, I am going to hand things over to Matt to start our afternoon.
All right. Well, thank you, Michelle, and thank you everyone who's attending today. It's always a pleasure to connect with fellow tribal IT professionals here through Tribal Hub. And thank you again to Shannon and George for joining us today. As we dive in, again, I'm Matt Brakowski from Arctic IT. Been here for 19 years and very excited to continue to be part of Tribal Hub and the TribalNet conference coming up. Unfortunately, Controller McCabe, well, he's been a big part of helping prepare for this, as I'm sure many of you have experienced in the past. He got called in last minute to give a report at Tribal Council session today. He could not say no to, unfortunately. So while he did provide some great notes for us, he is not going to be able to join us live on the call today. And Shannon, mind saying a quick hello?
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Shannon Ramon. I am from the Tohono O'odham Nation. I am the Director of IT. And our tribe is currently under project with Arctic IT. So I'm excited to be here with all of you today.
Oh, thank you, Shannon. And George.
Hi, I'm George Wood. I've been with the Mohegan Tribe for about 24 years. I'm the CIO currently, and in 2017 and 2018, we did migration from Microsoft Dynamics GP to Dynamics 365, and I'm sharing some of that experience as we go
All right,
through our
well,
presentation.
Well, thank you both, Shannon and George, for being with us here today. For our agenda, just a high-level view. Is nice to see so many current customers, the folks we've been working with over the years, joining today. Just a quick high-level view of who Arctic IT is and why we're part of presenting this today. Touch briefly on some of what we're seeing in the landscape now, for some of the challenges across tribal finance. But then the most of our time will be spent covering some great questions and stuff with George and Shannon today, as well as with some feedback that Sean had provided to be able to share. We'll make time throughout for Q&A. So with that, if you have questions throughout, like Michelle said, put them in the chat. And we'll do our best to address them during the panel itself, but we'll also have some time at the end to maybe cover any questions we hadn't been able to get to. And then we will spend a few minutes ending with just giving a solution, our recommended solution of some things that we see working really well across the tribal finance landscape, and have a quick poll for next steps at the end. So thank you all for attending today. So with that, we'll dive in. As technology professionals, I'm sure you all would agree that when it comes to choosing the right technology, that is an important piece of what we do, right? But beyond that as well, choosing the right partner we know is just as important in making sure that those technologies are able to be used at the highest capacity. So with that, we are proud to be a subsidiary of the Doyon Alaska Native Corporation. So being Native owned ourselves, we've had the distinct pleasure of spending the last 20 years working with tribal communities across what us from Alaska might say the lower 48, and with other Alaska Native organizations over the last 20 years, helping make the best use of Microsoft technology. Here's just a map of a lot of the customers that we have worked with. And again, we've heard Green Bay and other folks like that. Glad to see some of you represented by these dots on the map here across. So thank you all for being here. And while today we are focused on the Dynamics 365, or just in general, really finance technology, which is a big piece of what we do at Arctic IT, we do bring full support across the Microsoft Cloud architecture. And so while that includes Dynamics 365 and the Power Platforms, which we've been able to present before with TribalHub as well, we also have those ongoing managed services to help not only with the application side of that, like Dynamics and Power Platform. We also provide that support for M365 and other cloud-based security platforms. Again, all part of Microsoft Stack. And we have our own IP written on the Microsoft platform called Tribal Platforms that provides centralized member services from enrollment to family wellness and social services, education, things like that across to help organizations really provide better services and interact with their membership utilizing technology built on the Microsoft Cloud. But for today, the focus is finance. And in particular, we talked about simplifying tribal finance, utilizing technology. And the real need for that is driven by a number of different things. If I were to have conversations with CFOs when we do, this list could go on and on. But some of the things that are really driving change is one we see up here in the upper left, that council and leadership, and even our internally for our own departments, folks that we're working with, the need for having access to better reporting and to make decisions based upon that data in a way that doesn't take months or weeks to get together in reports is consistently driving forward, and looking for technology that helps be able to bring those insights from the programs and solutions that we use, especially in finance, is consistently, we need to do that faster and better, and making that easier to use, right? But because especially in a multi-entity landscape, when we think about our economic development corporations and gaming and government entities, right? If you have different solutions being used across those different entities, that just makes that harder and slower to be able to get that consolidated view of what's happening across our organizations and nations, especially for council and leadership that they're looking at things holistically, right? We're just being asked for more security and compliance in regards to audit and not only audits, excuse me, but also on the technology side, and being able to enable things like this, remote work with digital service and expectations for that, and being able to interact with our membership in a similar way, right? And it's I almost never talk with the finance, or I don't think ever have talked with the finance department or IT department for that matter, that really feels like, I think I've got enough people. I don't need technology to help me work better, right? Because I've got all the folks that I need. We're consistently asked to do more with fewer resources, and finance is no different from that. So those of us in tribal technology are often asked to help as much as we can, and that's where it really kind of sparked what we're looking for today to discuss with our great team of panelists. So with that, be going through a series of questions. Again, want to reiterate the idea of please use the chat to ask questions you have along the way with Michelle, myself, Kelly from our team. We'll do our best to keep eyes on that to surface those questions when they come up. So as we're getting started, Shannon, I would love to start with you. Why do you see, first of all, for yourself with where you're working, and then other organizations that you've talked with, why are tribal governments and enterprises moving towards the centralized financial systems?
Thanks, Matt, for a number of reasons. A lot of the deciding factors for our tribe had been accessibility and security. So security first and foremost. The Microsoft platform, adding Dynamics on top of that and partnering with Arctic IT, it incorporates everything that we're already using with our Microsoft agreement, our enterprise agreement. So it's familiar to our user base. It meets all of our cybersecurity requirements, and our teams are already familiar with it. I think one of the biggest things as a director for our team is try not to introduce too many applications that we have to learn a whole new skill set to administer, and just maximizing the skill set of my current team, but also introducing something that our user base is already familiar with. And not only that, but the mobility of it. Our leaders, they're everywhere. They're not always in an office or in the communities. They're networking with other tribal governments on the federal level, state level. They're doing their job outside of the office. And so we needed to be flexible and still deliver a secure solution to them that covers the multi-entities that you mentioned earlier. That describes our nation. We're a multi-entity nation, and we cover all sectors of the tribal government. So we needed something dynamic enough, and no pun intended, to adapt to us. So, yeah.
Well, terrific. Thank you. And how about you, George?
I think I'll come off mute first. I think the one of the things for us, and we did this pre-pandemic when everybody wasn't kind of thinking about the accessibility. So Shannon bringing that up is really critical now for us too, and people are operating differently. But we were on Dynamics Great Plains, which we knew that Microsoft was not making any more significant investments in. So it was the right time for us to try and move to a cloud-based solution. And selfishly, from an IT standpoint, the fact that we're not having to do updates in the middle of the night and make sure that systems are up and maintained, or watching for outage windows and making sure that as we're doing patching and all of those other things that need to be done to our environments to keep them secure and safe in operating, that the end users aren't impacted. So all of that stuff and that back of house hygiene is turned over to Microsoft and handled on the Microsoft side of the house. And it was quite a change for us, because there were many years where between Christmas and New Year's we were staying up late at night trying to make sure we got the latest updates in and clients all updated on everybody's desktop. I think that's another key, is that, you know, all the desktops needed to be updated at the same time, and making sure that everybody had the latest version of the code to move forward. And having a weekly payroll. At that point, we were running payroll through Great Plains. We didn't have a lot of time to be able to get all those updates executed and make sure that everybody was up and running. So,
Well, and George, for you all, I know there are a lot of benefits in getting through to the migration to a cloud solution. For you all as well, with having your government and government entities as well as economic development,
yeah.
what goes into the idea of having all of those utilizing the same platform, even if they're different, secured entities within that?
Well, we had other platforms in place before. We had multiple platforms, and trying to bring all that data together in order to, you know, create unified reporting, or even just to get monthly, you know, budget and actual expenditure reports out, was always a challenge. Having separate, you know, project management platforms that had finance systems built into them that were used by departments, having, you know, at some point manufacturing and restaurant systems, and trying to pull all that data together was really a huge challenge. And then being able to make sure that you're presenting it accurately, because it's not normalized across all those systems. So having one system on the back end where the data is all, you know, homogeneous and can be pulled together very easily was critical to reporting and being effective.
I have something to add if you don't mind.
Oh, please.
Yeah, so George brought up a really good point about the budgeting, because that was one of our deciding factors, is the budgeting piece of this. I think a lot of tribes can relate to the many different approval levels that our budgets go through to have it approved. And the Dynamics 365 solution was flexible enough, customizable enough for us to incorporate that workflow and even refine that workflow, gave us a really great opportunity to sit with all of our stakeholders that are involved in those various approval levels and discuss, you know, why are there so many approval levels? Can we make this process more efficient, leveraging the new system? And there's been a lot of good relationship building that's happened along the way as well. And so it gave us a really good opportunity to partner with all of the various levels, because that includes our department leadership, our executive leadership, our council leadership. It goes through so many different approval levels, and we were really looking for a big solution, because we are an enterprise. We have a lot of data, first of all, and we need to make sure that we have a better way to just manage those workflows and have better visibility. And having a cloud system that gives you that visibility, where people, you know, are not necessarily picking up the phone or tracking down a person walking from office to find out what the status of a certain, you know, approval is, whether it's a budget or a purchase requisition or a payment. They're able to access that directly for themselves in Dynamics 365. So I am looking forward, because again, we're still in project, but looking forward to the day where everybody is so familiar with logging in and seeing that, and that's their new norm. They're able to access that information for themselves. But the budget piece of that, big motivator for us.
Well, thank you, Shannon. And some of the notes from Sean, he shared a similar story about the fact that how many processes around the Navajo Nation are walking paper around trying to see who's got what where, whose desk is it still on, right? I'm sure we've all dealt with that in one way, shape, or form over the years. But being able to have a centralized system across our different departments and eventually chapters or other things as well, to be able to make that really the buying decision a lot easier, because you've got that budget information, what's available right in front of you. Where would this procurement put us within our budget, and what are the needs that we have to get that approved? Being able to just digitize that across different entities and chapters and or districts, I think for you all it was hugely important for them in making that decision and investment to make a big move. And similar to you all, Navajo Nation is just in the middle of their implementation, only a few months at this point, but it's a big piece of making a decision in moving forward.
Yeah, and I
Now,
know we're going to talk about it a little bit more, but I think, you know, the extensibility of the system and being able to, you know, build some of the bridges that we have, you know, with the cloud-based system and how Microsoft has built the platform to allow for that is was critical too.
yes,
Mhm.
absolutely. With that, both of you all throughout discussing that last question talked about the data, right? Whether that's you're having a centralized place to pull that from, but also just a strategy in general in helping to go forward with getting the right reports and those things. Uh, and also what we're seeing with AI right now and how that is all based upon our data. How does your data strategy play a role within your financial system efforts? Shannon, you want to start us off?
Uh, yeah, so I'm kind of monitoring the chat too, and this might be a little bit about our data strategy because um our organization, you know, we do fund accounting. We definitely do fund accounting, and we try to standardize as much as possible with all of our user bases, or we'll just say user bases, all of the populations of the data types that we have, and centralizing that. And so that was a big motivator as far as like centralizing data, using the same chart of accounts across all of our entities, having that direct accessibility to them, but also, you know, making sure that we're compliant. We're able to report all of the necessary audit reports so we stay in compliance and that it is uniform and that the data isn't living anywhere else. So that was also a big motivator for us, is just making sure that the data lives in one place. And it doesn't really need to be exported. The exports are the reports, and that is presented to, you know, whoever that may be.
And do you have a specific tool that you either are using or planning to use for reporting on that data at this point? I think we were talking Power BI or some other aspects.
Yes, and this is actually something that came up as a change request in our project. Our project has been a very large project. We're about 2 years into the project when the original scope timeline was for a year, and just the sheer amount of work that we had to sift through, had to prepare for. The change request that kind of surfaced was deciding with the Arctic team and a solution for Power BI dashboards. And so instead of training and, you know, choosing a different licensing model for our program directors or program executive managers or managers, they would be able to go into their own 365 account and see a dashboard view of a lot of commonly asked questions. So our finance team right now generates some pretty standard reports that they send out on a weekly basis to our teams, and those are manually done. So although we do have a centralized system right now, it is only interacted with by our finance teams. And so they have to go in there. We can't automatically schedule any type of reports or display this information in a way that the people have direct access to it. Power BI is going to be used, or is being used, to develop a custom dashboard for that user base. So they'll be able to log in and see a lot of the commonly used reports displayed back to them. They can go in and check the balance of their current account. They'll be able to see a lot of core data that they're interested in without having to wait for a request to be fulfilled by our finance teams.
Oh, that's great. Good insight. Thank you, Shannon.
Mhm.
And George, how does your data strategy within the Mohegan Tribe kind of play into what you do and help support the finance team with?
Yeah, I think Shannon made a lot of great points about reporting in Power BI and everything. But I think, you know, as we came down this journey, it really was about understanding our data and what the required outputs were and what were people looking for, right? So as you're developing and building out the system, making sure you understand what is the tribal council need in order to be you know, making the decisions that they need to make. What is our CFO need to be able to, get his hands on very quickly in more real time in order to be able to make effective decisions about how funds are being utilized. The other key for us was trying to centralize and making sure that all the financial data wound up in Dynamics 365. So we have other systems and recently put in a medical claims processing system that had its built-in, accounting tools. And we made a decision to say, no, we want all of the accounting, all of the financial data to be in Dynamics 365. So being able to build those bridges between systems and making sure that the data exists in one place, if the accountants need to get to it, or auditors or whatever, all of the financial data is in one spot. But also building those communications back to those other systems so that we're keeping the phones from ringing, to the point. A lot of the reporting and the data is you need that out to the people, right? It's great that we have the data, but if it's not getting out to the end users to consume it, it's not very useful. So making sure that you're building that information so that the phone stops ringing and users finance can focus on what they need to get accomplished throughout the day. But also the other departments are effective because they can see the data that's required for them. They know when a payment was made and what date it was made. So if a vendor is calling them directly, which happens all the time, they can put their fingers right on that information.
No, it's good.
I love George's input because it really gives you a scale of how the solution impacts your organization. George is further along. Like, they were in project, they're live. They've been using it. He has real world feedback to be able to provide back to this group and to me, really, because me and our team here at Tohono O'odham Nation, those are his lessons learned. Those are George's and his organization's lessons learned. And so knowing that we're arriving at the same type of solution feels like we're on the right path as far as the direction that we're headed in, and working towards our go live and making this information accessible to our end users. So I really like to listen to everything George has to provide insight to, because he's already live.
Shannon, you're very kind. You're very kind.
It's useful.
But it is, I joke with my team all the time that I want to share this information because I want, and the joke is I want people to make new mistakes, not the same mistakes that we made, right?
Yes.
So,
Yep.
make new and exciting mistakes. Don't go down the same path that we might have gone down and regretted. So.
Yes, if only my
Love
kids
it.
would listen to me when I say the same thing, George.
They have to make their own mistakes, yes.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things that Sean and I had talked about, we were at NAFOA, and I think we attended the same session, is NAFOA this year talked a lot about just some of what's happening within AI that's going to be impacting financial systems. And a big piece of that is the data strategy, right? To be able to help spot trends, automate reconciliation processes, simplify our communication with vendors and those things, right? That's all based upon your data, and having that in a unified place, having the data security set up to make sure that you're only getting answers from data that you have access to, right, is a key piece of this. So as you're going forward and thinking about your modernization efforts and systems, like having that in the back of your mind of how does this investment that we're going to make impact my ability to take use of and make use of this ongoing growing list of AI agents that are available now and is only going to skyrocket here in the coming years. And Dan, I did see your question about handling accounting, fund accounting on the government side and standard accounting on the casino side. And I'll show a little example or just talk a little bit about that more later. But at a high level, within Dynamics, but other systems can support some similar items, is the idea of you can have shared charts of accounts but they can be different charts of accounts within the same system. So you'd have a government-based chart of accounts and your fund accounting rules set up for that, but then you could have either like gaming charts of accounts or economic development. So if you have multiple entities within that, those similar entities can share a chart of account structure, but the ones that are different can have their own unique ones for funds and grants and everything you need there. And then at a consolidation level, you can have similar mappings and stuff to be able to provide roll-ups across all of those by essentially creating a mapping of how those different charts relate to one another. within those different legal entities that can be separated from a security standpoint, who can access what and which entities and perform actions in those. But then, as George was saying, be unified in a data structure in the back end, as well as how it's configured within there. So as we've been talking about technology, and technology is only part of the puzzle, right? If your organization isn't prepared for it or can't make use of that new technology, it's those modernization efforts aren't going to achieve their full impact. So George, starting with you on this one, what are some of the ways that you've helped prepare your organization for the change happening with a new ERP system?
I think number one, you have to be very positive about it, right? Because everybody loves change. So, when you go to your end users that have been using the same system for 20 years and they're like, well, why do we need to do this? Why do we need to do this? So there is a lot of playing cheerleader, to be honest with you, to starting out. And then it is making sure that you have all of your processes and procedures and you understand how the business really operates, and making sure that as you're building out the system, that you're accounting for all of the unique things that we all do as tribal entities, right? And everybody has their own unique way of entering data and moving through the finance system. But then also understanding that, okay, we may not have the best processes and procedures for the new system. We may need to be flexible and work with the users to say, okay, yes, I know you did this way in Great Plains, and that worked great for you, and you were very happy every day, right? But we're going to change the way you do things because this really is the way it should be done. And it impacts all of the other users down the chain and how they operate if you don't, if you don't kind of follow the way the system is built. One of the things I had to talk with end users a lot about is that Microsoft didn't just go into a vacuum and come up with Dynamics 365, right? It was built on best practices throughout, other finance entities. And so if we aren't following that, maybe we do need to look at our process, and maybe there is some adaptation that needs to happen on the process side. But we also need to make sure that all of those critical processes that you have are captured, all of the integration points, where, okay, this system over here gives us this piece of data, and then we bring it in here, right? And but making sure that all of those things are documented and captured. You're still going to miss stuff as you go through, and you're going to have to be flexible as because somebody will come up at the last minute and go, oh, but this, right? But getting as much documentation as you can together before you even start down the path of implementing a system.
Shannon, you seem to be nodding along quite a bit with that.
Yes.
Similar thoughts?
I think this is probably the most exciting question because a lot of the work that we have done is not technology related at all. It is related to the project directly, of course, but it was a lot of people changing. George hit the nail on the head when he said that preparing people, being positive, and you really have to build relationships in different ways, just depending on the individuals, the different teams that we have in our finance teams. We have a large finance team, and it is comprised of accounting folks, of treasury, payroll, our leadership, really taking a look at all of the people who are categorized as stakeholders of this, owners of the current system and processes, and identifying who those people are and telling them this is who they are in some cases, because I think that there is definitely a lot of our employees who have been very loyal to the Tohono O'odham Nation and have a wealth of knowledge, institutional knowledge, but they haven't really had conversations about these processes being exactly what they are, and that they are a stakeholder, they are an owner of these processes, and they play an important role. And so a lot of it was, just building up those individuals, talking about, documenting it. We're people of not a lot of documents in terms of historical information, or traditionally we do a lot of verbal communication, verbal teachings, and so that kind of carried over into our workplace, and we have to help along with that. Make sure that we're talking about, what should be documented, helping them see the bigger picture and knowing how huge of a project this is that we're entering into. And exactly what George said about documenting your processes. If you're even thinking about going to a larger platform or larger solution, any solution, document. Find out what you're currently doing. Just do a bullet list. It could be even on paper. Just write down exactly this happens and this happens and this happens. And you find yourself discovering more and more ways to improve your processes. And, that drives a lot of excitement for a lot of folks in our different teams. And so the people aspect, from my perspective, from my experience, my team's experience, was really geared towards that. The technology part, like, they already know how to do the job. And this is definitely a message I try to hit home with, is they possess the skill sets now because they are doing a much more complex system, manual plus electronic, incorporating all these different steps to accomplish the same outcome. Well, we're trying to make your life easier. The tribe, the organization is choosing to make more simplistic workflows, so you don't have to spend that amount of time that you're spending now to do this process that we can make more efficient. So they possess the skills already.
I think just one more quick point. I think the other piece that comes out of this, right, that we don't realize it's a benefit of going through some of these things is business continuity, right? And we don't have, we may have somebody that's been doing that job for decades, right? And now they don't have this stuff documented. And if they were ever not around, we may lose critical processes that need to be accomplished.
Yes, great point. And we've had those experiences for sure. I don't know how many tribes are represented on this webinar, but even if, the recording that's playing back, business continuity is like what George brought up, environmental as well. Our main user base is in Sells, Arizona, and we are subject to power outages, internet outages, and it is a big motivator as well to have to change locations for our people and still continue to process the large amount of requests that we get on a daily basis. And so that definitely something that was conveyed to our user base so that they know, like, what, this happens now, but with this solution, this is what is possible. So always talking about what is possible, reminding them of what that end goal is and what we're working towards.
One of the unique things that Sean had shared that I thought was a great idea when it comes to not just preparing for change, but also measuring that a little bit, knowing that when you're going through all this effort, being able to show some of that. So one of the things that we helped him with from a change management perspective, as we're kicking off the ERP implementation, was putting together a survey, not necessarily for the finance team themselves, but for all the other external stakeholders across the organization that are working with procurement exercises and other things that are a key impact and are end users of the system in certain ways, but aren't in there day to day, to get a feel for what are some of their biggest pain points, what are some of the most frustrations that they have in trying to work with some of these older systems, and policies and procedures, but also of the finance department itself, so that 6 months or a year at various intervals after the system is live, continuing to submit some of those same surveys so they can track the feasibility and the true impact that to the external stakeholders across the organization are making, to be able to track some of that and show some of that value later, to be able to get more buy-in for continued modernization efforts across the nation.
Love it.
As we keep an eye on the time a little bit here and think through some questions, we had one here about what opportunities you've seen to extend the benefits of the system you're currently using. George, you talked already a little bit about integrating with your medical claim system and other things like that, that you're doing. Shannon, as we were talking beforehand, you were planning for some other like utility integrations and things. Is that correct?
Yes. So we have a solid waste management crew billing for solid waste management. We also have hospitals and clinics under our umbrella as well. So we have, that billing as well. We have a lot of customers who we have to separate residential from contractors or businesses. So that is definitely in the near future for us to really shift our focus on, once we have some time to go live, be in production for a while, to focus on how to refine solid waste process, specifically solid waste and that healthcare processing. So definitely excited about seeing how we're able to improve that process.
That makes sense. Any other insight that you had there, George?
Well, we have, integrated, and we actually did this back with GP. We have integrated with our utility authorities systems because we resell, electricity, gas, and water on the property. So that was one of the big integrations that we had to make sure, followed through as we built out Dynamics 365. But as I look at it, we were doing, we had wood pellet plants that we had up and running there for a while. Okay, so we were doing the manufacturing, the invoicing, the bills of material, all of that stuff, all under the Dynamics 365 hood, and restaurant accounting too. So we were pulling in, all the information from our restaurant systems into Dynamics 365. And even passing out data to bill of lading systems for the wood pellets and those kinds of things. So there's a lot of opportunity, through the and I'm going to get this wrong, Matt, so you'll correct me, but the CDS, right, the common data structure, is that still what it's called?
Yeah. Yes. Microsoft has now named that the Dataverse.
Yep.
So
Yeah, well, it's Microsoft. It's probably changed 3 times since it was CDS, right? So anyway, but just having the hooks out there where we can pull and use this data to make those other processes more efficient, and we're all the time looking at, right now. We collect the sales tax on the property. So one of the things there is, we're going to start doing our sales tax invoices out to our property holders. Okay, there is some discussion in Connecticut about us being able to collect property tax on the property. So we're going to be doing, all of that with, new integrations into Dynamics 365. We're fortunate enough to have a developer, a couple of developers on the team that are very familiar now with building these tools out.
terrific. Thank you. And I know, as we talked a little bit earlier, some of the longer term plans for at the Navajo Nation to look at a lot of their chapter houses are currently running their own systems, being able to bring that within one just to give better visibility across things, as well as some of their other departments that are maybe using some separate systems for things like managing projects and all that, or keeping track of project costs, being able to roll that in within the single system as well, just continues to expand upon the benefits and the centralization of that for better reporting, decision making and automation.
Awesome.
So as we've talked about a number of the factors to consider, that you all had considered and some of the things that have happened since in choosing a new financial system, what are some other aspects, and maybe we haven't touched on today, that are important and were important for you when helping make a decision for a new ERP? George, you want to start us on this one?
Yeah, I guess I'll start. One of the key factors for us was, it was Microsoft to Microsoft, right? So knowing that Microsoft would understand the GP data structure as you're doing an upgrade into Dynamics 365 to try and make that a little bit smoother, and understanding what those migration paths look like. I think the other is, choosing a partner. One of the other ones is choosing a partner that has some experience in doing this, right? And bringing you from one of these, old, client server type situation or solutions to a cloud-based solution, and has done this before. Because if you don't have that partner, you're not gonna be successful. But really understanding again how the system is going to operate, the accessibility. Is it, what is the security for us? That's, number one all the time now. Let me look at the SOC 2 report and see what Microsoft's doing and how are they protecting their solution and protecting our data, and making sure that all of those other factors, data backups, what do I do in a disaster situation, and what are the plans there? And then I'll tell you, maturity, a little bit of maturity too, and understanding that this system is, being used out and has a solid user base, and that there is some maturity behind it, and yet end users that are confident in being successful with the system and other organizations.
All
I
right.
know my sysadmin will be super happy about not having to do the year-end updates, the upgrades with all the tax information on that. They'll be super happy about not having to do that. It is now in Dynamics, and we are partnering with Arctic IT. I mean, that was a big portion of that. That was definitely a big portion of that. But as far as the system goes, Dynamics 365 goes, how granular it can be, how granular it can be, how customizable it could be, because we definitely cover a lot of entities. We do the fund accounting, and yeah, like we are coming from an Abila MIP environment. And that has been something that we were very interested in and deciding, can that data be migrated? Can we have a certain number of years that we're asking for to be migrated? Can we negotiate all of that? What can be in scope? And so a lot of time was definitely spent on that scope of work and deciding, can you cover all of our requests, all of our needs to cover, and then leaving the legal portion open for negotiation. I think that was another big deciding factor for us is, the technology portion of it, yes. But once we start to get into the weeds of how we can actually procure a new solution, if any of those items were not budged on from the vendor side, I think that would have probably been a deal breaker for us. I think for data sovereignty for tribes, if we don't have that freedom and ability to negotiate our terms in our legal documents, you know what? Thanks, but no thanks. So legal documents for us are a very vital portion of whether or not we move forward with something. So that portion of it we spend a lot of time on it. We spend a lot of time on that, and working our way through our legislative council and having that approval of our organization was huge. So the technical pieces are definitely what helps us to present a solution to our organization leadership or our tribal government leadership. But the granularity of how customizable it can be, can it fit what we're doing now? And we can keep that data and migrate that over.
No, thank you, Shannon. You bring a good point there that it can be very difficult. I'm sure you all have had to try to negotiate convincing a technology vendor to accept tribal court jurisdictions and stuff like that. What does it look like to do that, to honor not only be able to provide the data sovereignty protections that Microsoft does, but then also being willing to have contracts written up with tribal court jurisdictions and stuff in there. And being native owned ourselves, it's definitely made that a lot easier as we understand that and have been willing to do so and do so time and time again. But there are vendors that don't work within that space very often, whose legal departments are much less likely to be able to come to agreement there. So
yeah,
and it can definitely take time. I understand completely. Now, with that, there was a couple of other questions here I want to touch on briefly, and then sync up on a couple of more features that we talked about to wrap up here. Tammy, again, you asked a question about MIP, and Shannon answered that. Within you're working and helping a number of Native nations make a move to Dynamics over the years. MIP being so widely used, we've definitely helped folks make that migration multiple times. And there was a great question earlier about how do you handle per capita distributions? Because there's a lot of complexity within that, and Microsoft themselves within Dynamics does not provide any specific per capita support with that may be different from other AP systems you've used in the past. So earlier, I mentioned that we have our solutions that Arctic IT has created called Tribal Platforms that provides support for things like enrollment and education services, housing, tribal courts. But one of those things we also have, we have a solution within Tribal Platforms called distribution payments for that exact reason that you often have certain people that for confidentiality reasons are all involved within how it's calculated, what are the deductions, what are the taxes, what needs to be withheld, and it manages all of that within distribution payments. And then when ready, after all those calculations have been done, it simply utilizes Dynamics to then process the payment, but then has all the information needed in it for your 1099 reporting and all that at the end of the year. So we handle all of that within essentially our custom solution or our own solution that we've created called distribution payments, and then feed that into Dynamics for the actual distribution of the payments. A great question there. Okay, and Lorenzo, to your question about Alaska, being an Alaska Native corporation, we've definitely done work. I've gone up to Barrow a few times to do upgrades, in the past, but so we'd be happy to evaluate if it is the right fit for you, and if that involves then coming on site to do training and all that, absolutely, it's something that we've done in the past, and are happy to do again for if the solution's the right fit for you. And we talk about that. Please throughout, feel free to add any more questions if you may have another minute or two here at the end. Be happy to address those or follow up afterwards. We've talked a number of times today, and thank you to George and Shannon again for sharing some of their experience with Dynamics 365. Truly, with that, we believe very strongly in the Microsoft platform, with not only what it can help protect from a data sovereignty perspective, all of the updates and natural things from a true cloud solution that George and Shannon talked about, but also now Microsoft being on the forefront of other innovations, right? With the AI capabilities that are coming out with low code apps, and we talked about our tribal platforms all being within the Microsoft space, being able to easily integrate that, connect it with other things. Just that Microsoft Azure platform with support for the government community cloud as well. If you need GCC support or you're utilizing the GCC already, we can keep that all within there, utilizing those great functionality to support not only your other operations and modern workplace solutions that Microsoft, that many of you are probably already using, but as well then the financial side. But when we think about a finance system, it's more than just the finance and accounting, right? The true supply chain management for things like the procurement, requisitions, inventory and warehousing, if needed, being able to even connect with retail and e-commerce. Microsoft does have as part of this platform, there's point of sale solution as part of that we deployed for the National Park Service, for instance, that works very well. Again, all connected within that Dynamics 365 platform, as well as community engagement, right? Our tribal platforms we talked about earlier. So it's more than just the financial system, it's the ability to connect with and also support and provide functionality all throughout. Like we said, project and grant management was a question earlier, the inventory and warehousing, and then the automation capabilities as well. So with just a few minutes here, highlighting on some of the key functionality to support multi-entity. So we talked about earlier, you can handle government and commercial accounting. We have customers that are doing the government accounting, they're doing gaming, the gaming side, as well as their non-gaming entities, all within one solution. Again, you can separate the security of those, have the different shared charts of accounts, for those different groups of entities, to streamline that across that, but then giving you the consolidation capabilities at the top level for maybe your tribal CFOs and your council members and those. And then being able to report across that, across all your entities. You can look at your spend. You get a dashboard that looks at how much you're spending with different vendors, not only in one entity, but across all your entities. You may be giving you more negotiation capabilities for getting better prices and things like that. And being able to see those dashboards for those that are authorized to do so. Again, not only for one entity, but rolled up across all of your organization, across your entities, to give you greater insight into what's happening there. And then, as we talked about the real-time reporting, that it does fully utilize Power BI, not creating its own dashboarding tool within there. So you can not only use Power BI to create reports off of the data, but those reports can then be embedded right within Dynamics, so your users aren't having to switch to different places if needed to run the reports. They can all be embedded within the same application interface, just to make it that much easier. And those, even on the IT side that are authorized, you can make edits to the reports right within there, again, if authorized to do so, if someone is the owner of those reports. And of course, full integration with the rest of the Microsoft stack. So easily being able to interact with Excel, Word, and other things right within the application. And then finally, we do have the idea of AI agents, right? We've been hearing about these coming out. Microsoft's already started publishing these. More and more we'll see these where it can automate reconciliation for you, where users are just handling exceptions, not only just on the bank reconciliation side, but the ability to reconcile your different ledgers, AP and AR, and the GL, for instance, to show you on a daily basis if there are any exceptions you need to take a look at, see the reporting behind it, just to help really speed up month end in particular. And then also already available is supplier communication agent, where it can monitor emails and give you updates about PO delivery statuses and change those or suggest changes to delivery dates, maybe encumbrance dates or other things if stuff is struggling to be delivered on time by your vendors, just by monitoring email traffic, you back and forth and generating some of that right within the system to make it easier for you to move forward and make decisions on the changing landscape with your vendors. And as you've heard from two today, the tribal space is very heavily using the Microsoft Cloud. There are already 420 different tribes utilizing that, or different tribal entities utilizing the Microsoft Cloud, really because of that security and compliance support across all those applications. So with that, we've got just a few minutes here. Popping up on your screen here shortly should be a poll. This is just making sure that we can follow up with folks that would like some follow-up. So if you take a minute just to click what is most appropriate for you here, that will allow us to make sure we are taking the appropriate steps or no steps needed for those of you that are attending today. So thank you for that. As we are wrapping up here with the last minute or so, we want to also remind you that, as Michelle said, we've got TribalNet coming up here. September 15th is a lot closer than it feels like it should be. You're really just 2.5 months or so away. We're gonna have a big booth there. We're excited to hopefully see many of you there. So join us and let us know if you're coming. We'd love to meet up with you there. So with that, Michelle, did you have any final, any wrap up or any final things that you had for today?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have anything. Looks like we answered all the questions. There's nothing in the Q&A. So I guess just a big thanks. This was really great. I loved all of the comments and the outreach. If anybody in the call needs to reach out to anybody at Arctic and you lose a number, you can always reach out to us here at Tribal Hub. We can put you in touch with them to get all of your questions answered. So obviously it's a great topic. Thank you for sharing all this information. Thank you, George and Shannon, for being on the call and helping other tribes today. I love it when this happens, and it's been a great, very informative conversation. So
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. And
everyone.
special shout out to my accounting team, our finance team. They're doing a tremendous job in our project, and we're almost towards the finish line. So thank you, everyone, and thank you for having me.
it's awesome. All right. Well, everybody have a great afternoon. And we will talk to you next time. Thanks, guys.
Thank you
Take
much.
care.
Bye.
Bye.